New resurrected Oni Garmadon one of the most powerful arcs in this entire show. Throughout the end of Season 8 and the 9th season of the show, Garmadon slowly transforms from being a mindless killing machine to becoming more and more of a person, and is confronted with the game-changing revelation that he does still have the capacity to care, as he hesitates when he has the perfect opportunity to kill Lloyd. To make sure this doesn't get in the way of his goals, Garmadon adopts Harumi so he can have someone to care about beyond Lloyd, who he has to kill. But things go south when Harumi is brutally killed and then Garmadon loses his empire, which leads to March the Oni, where he is more human than he was at the end of Season 8, but he still has a long way to go, and is almost definitely, at least to some extent, repressing his ability to care. Then, after constantly pushing this survivalist, feelings come last mindset, Lloyd eventually blows up on Garmadon and gives him a massive reality check, which leads into a conversation with Vinny, where Garmadon is fully reminded of what makes life worth living. Then he's confronted with the idea of Lloyd being killed by the Oni, which makes him realize that this mindless conqueror stuff is insane. And he finally accepts that he does care for other people, and puts his life on the line to save his son along with everyone in the 16 realms. After this, Garmadon and Wu are finally at a position where they feel like they're at peace with each other. And in a sharp contrast to the original pilots, where Garmadon is violently banished from the monastery of Spinjitzu for his crimes, Garmadon is able to leave the monastery on his own terms in order to carve out his own path in life. Now, before I get a bunch of inevitable comments about this, I am not talking about that season here. Although the Wildbrain seasons kind of faltered with how they brought back characters, the first 10 seasons of the show, minus when they brought back the Overlord and rebooted for no reason, were pretty incredible at bringing back deceased characters. And I think this is because usually when a character dies in this season and comes back, the writers will replace that death with something just as good, if not better. Leaving most viewers in a position where they're thinking, sure, it would have been nice if this character was allowed to stay dead, but if that happened, we would have never got this wonderful story. I think this is something that the future Ninjago installments could definitely take some notes from, because oh my god, these old seasons did this concept really well. Although I want to pass the mic on to you guys. Let me know in the comments what your favourite character revival is in all of Ninjago. It can be anything from Moro to Garmadon, to even something I'd absolutely disagree with, like Harumi in the newest season. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video all the way through to the end, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.
Oh, wow. Hello, everybody. I don't know how I'm gonna try and keep my cool here while I make this video. Good news is Thomas has been rebooted. The reboot, it's official, season 25, 26 is coming next year. The hiatus is over. But the bad news, he looks like this. No, really, guys, I don't know where to begin with this, honestly. I'm not even going to read the article. All I'm going to do is, I read the article. I'll link the article, you guys can read it. It's done. The show's over. I can't even battle this right now. I don't even know what I'm going to say. Where else have I seen some shitty-ass reboots? Like, 100 episodes, and 2 specials, and 2 seasons, and they've turned Thomas into a cartoon. And not like CGI, a cartoon. Let's turn Thomas into a low-budget, 2D, cartoony animation that looks like something from an old Disney cartoon. And I have to double check too. Like, did Mattel sell Thomas to Disney? Because I'm pretty confused. This looks like some shit that Disney would create, but it's still Mattel, surprisingly. And also inside April Fools, I had to double check the date to make sure I'm living in the same time period here. Literally shitting on Sharon Miller's head for destroying the show because they ruined my teenage years with Thomas. I shat on them. This goes beyond it. It's done. They've completely wrecked it. That's it. Turning Thomas into this brain-dead preschool-looking cartoon? Are you kidding me? Look, I understand. This looks great if you're doing some sort of spin-off or a children's book. Then it looks great. But the fact this is part of the series, this is part of the main series. This is canon. This is going to be canon. This has to be the only show. Where there's 3 different presentation styles since the beginning, and no series change. So every season it's had different. So you had the models, CGI, and now you're gonna have a damn cartoon. This is not Thomas. This is not Thomas. They've really ruined it. I really don't know what to say. Luckily I got all my rage out last night when I first saw it.
genuinely relate to, and it's why, even though this development doesn't actually carry much of an impact in later episodes, Luann remains one of my favorite characters on the show. But that's just it, you see. The development is, in retrospect, kinda fucking pointless. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy it's there. It's something many episodic shows don't bother with. My problem stems from the fact that even though we understand the characters a bit more, the development is pretty much completely fucking forgotten about until the next random episode in which their character is explored. Like, I'm not the only one who is kind of pissed that Luann has an episode at the end of season 2 where she learns to respect her siblings' limits when it comes to her shenanigans, and then at the start of the next bloody season we get the third April Fool's Day episode where she goes absolutely fucking feral and ruins her entire family's reputation with stunt doubles because they're funny. No, it's not funny. You're a cunt. Who's the flamboyant pillar who looked at that and went, yeah, that's fine, that's a good job? Like, no, it isn't a good job, Sammy. You done fucked it up. Back on topic. I don't really understand why we're supposed to care about these characters developing when their development has little to no bearing on anything. Like, sure, Lynn gets some development. She got bullied at school, had a little cry, boo-hoo. It doesn't excuse her acting like a complete cock. And before you ask why I have such a deep-rooted hatred for this character, well, don't take my word for it. Take the character's own words for it, as well as her actions, because my lord... It doesn't matter if a character is given a really good arc in one episode, that progress is completely sidelined as a result of the show being episodic, so why bother? This also ties into my previous point on how the show started to focus more and more on character-focused episodes. Now don't piss and shit and call your moms yet, this is not me contradicting myself, because a lot of people seem to think that just having an episode of one character that isn't Lincoln being the main focus means the episode contains character development, and it's a point used by plenty of people who defend the show to overhype how good it is. In season 2, the number of episodes not focused on Lincoln began to increase. We started getting adventures from all the Loud siblings' perspectives. Now believe it or not, I'm not fully against this idea, so long as it doesn't overtake the number of episodes about, you know, the Loud House. I'm fine with them taking a break every once in a while, but I'm pretty sure we all know right now they decided to take the show in a new direction. Well, it couldn't be that bad. I'm sure there are plenty of people who liked and wanted these to happen, who asked for an episode where Luann, Luna, and Laurie campaign to get their school clubs back. Thought so. These episodes just aren't interesting or remotely compelling enough to be worth watching. They just take up space. And given how many of these there are, it's a wonder why the fuck they haven't gone back to doing episodes in the Loud House, because that work can float infinitely better than the 600 episode about a retarded misunderstanding that at one point involves an unfunny, morbidly obese curmudgeon whose mere presence in the plot slot has killed 75% of my total happiness for the day, and whose mannerisms combined with his voice make me want to massacre a herd of gorillas. Who even voices him exactly? Oh, come on, Bender. You see, Bender is actually funny. Flip is just on a whole nother level of regurgitated stomach acid. Every time he's on screen, I feel another part of my empty soul leave my body. And unfortunately, he represents the worst traits of any side character on the show. Oh yeah, there are other side characters besides Flip. Can you remember them? All of these problems combined turned what was once a relatively entertaining show into one of the most painfully unoriginal and bland things I've ever seen come out of Nickelodeon. It's not on the same level of terrible as something like Pig Goat Banana. What the fuck? Pig Goat Banana. What? Why is that? But it no longer does anything to stick out, and good episodes are few and far between. What about seasons 4 and 5? No! This is where the quality of the show really started to tank. Kicking off season 4 for a whopping 9-episode masterpiece. Here's an episode where the Louds are envisions a more idealistic family just for their parents' benefits. Wait a second, didn't we already do something similar to this like 2 seasons ago? Keep that phone up your ass, Johnson, we're coming in hot for fucking 9.7 rating. Here's a list of movies and TV shows rated lower than this one episode that are much more worth your time than this soulless piece of retreaded condom spaff. There is an average of around 30 people actively rating every episode of The Loud House, with around 60% of ratings always being a perfect 10.
This piece of ass.
And you thought you were given too much credit.
And your bullshit!
Season 5 gets even worse, kicking off with an episode so bad that despite the relatively high IMDb rating, I actually saw quite a few people complaining about how the whole thing just scrapes the bottom of the barrel in terms of Canada jokes.
America Junior.
And having Lincoln get banished from Canada for not liking maple syrup. Someone wrote that joke and was really proud of themselves. And by the way, this episode ran for an hour. Yes, a full fucking hour of stale Canada jokes. Fucking God. This show is so well fucking written. I've managed to make it to about episode 14 in season 5, as that's the latest episode as of writing this video, but honestly, I think I've seen enough. Having sat through 4 seasons of some of the worst writing I've seen come out of Nickelodeon in years, The Loud House is simply a show in the middle of an identity crisis, and because of this identity crisis, it's not nearly as good as it originally was. Again, not to suck the first season's dick too much, but you could understand why people were fans of this show. It was simple, but that's what was so likable about it. It didn't complicate shit with experimental episode ideas. And while it's always good to step out of your comfort zone to see what works, when it clearly isn't working as well as what you did previously, then I think it might just be because you created your show around a very specific concept and it just doesn't work in any other setting. And it is a shame because I like these characters. I love 10 of these characters. And it's not like we've only gotten terrible stuff. There have been genuinely fantastic episodes, even if they don't harken back to the show's original antics. Tricked, really loud music, headphones anxiety, A Bridge Too Far. These 3 are some of the show's best episodes and they all came from season 3. There is legitimate writing talent present in the writer's room for this show, yet it barely gets a chance to truly shine. It makes for a very frustrating viewing experience and one with a very inconsistent quality. And if there's one thing I hate above all else, it's inconsistency. Yes, I know it's ironic. Ah yes, the show has gay characters. I don't care. The difference between The Loud House and something like The Owl House is that in The Loud House there's no story-driven plot to completely butcher the pacing of for the sake of having explicit queer representation. Lumity just didn't feel like an organic relationship to me, and it certainly didn't progress like one objectively either. In The Loud House, however, gay characters are actually treated with a little more actual respect as opposed to pushing them on a pedestal and sacrificing the believability of the characters and world just to make headlines in their first season. Now don't get me wrong, Loud House made plenty of headlines with its gay rep, that's just how the media works, but it wasn't actively aiming to make their gay rep a massive thing. Clyde having 2 dads is just shown as normal and doesn't seem to be forcing any kind of agenda other than basic human respect. This is representation I am fucking down for. And even though the reveal that Luna has a crush on Sam was kinda on the nose, it's still treated as a normal, healthy relationship. And I feel as if I must make this clear for a second because some people seem to get the wrong idea of me because of how much I meme on progressive programming. I am not against representation. It's just that the majority of it is really, really shit. So yeah, good job, Loud House, you did something right. For once. The unspoken rule that most people know when it comes to Nickelodeon is that the second it's on the tiniest hint of success, they will knock the show in question into its suck-dried and Epstein after a visit to his island. Any other show that doesn't meet the give a shit requirements set by SpongeBob ratings will be slowly poisoned or in some cases quickly murdered on the spot. As much as I hate The Legend of Korra for how much it breaks the world of Avatar and the fact that it's filled with more holes than XXX Tentacion's corpse, I will run that joke far into the ground until it starts making me giggle like a spastic for 5 hours. Even I'll admit that Nick did the show a little dirty, although after season 2 outclassed itself in sheer fucking stupidity, I don't think I would have liked to see it on TV either. They're still doing this to this day. Only a few years ago, unfairly smiting Harvey Beaks down over to Nicktoons to die a slow and painful death, along with holding the show's creator at gunpoint until he gave a public apology, after he called them out in the show's treatment because that's great PR, and more recently completely cutting glitch text from premiering on television and putting it on Netflix with barely any hype of promotion at all, aside from a few trailers that barely got any attention, while also putting its 2nd season on there the same day as The Legend of Korra, which they knew was going to be a massive success after reeling in a bunch of new Last Airbender fans only a few months prior, leading to the show being complete.
Not gonna make it this year. Alright.
Whip sweet, mate. Check this out.
Thank you. This is coming back with me. Come on. Yes. So where's we next? Epic.
Nintendo Switch. Play, connect.
Welcome to Best in Show. How much you saved at the supermarket? Emma here has 2 trolleys entered in the show. Pack and Save filled at Pack and Save Lower Hutt, and Countdown filled with the equivalent products from Countdown Lower Hutt. It's all up to the judges now. Pack and Save there from a long line of great trolleys. And there's the score. It's Pack and Save by a huge saving of $47.33. Oh, and he knows it too. Look at him. Pack and Save. Price below prices.
Complete completely overshadowed and now it's effectively cancelled. That's great. Thank you so much, Nickelodeon, you money-grubbing monkey cunts. And if you're looking to make a show and honestly want to tell me that you're comfortable with making a cartoon for Nickelodeon, then there's really only one life path open for you, pal. But let's go back a bit to the absolutely brain-dead hype the show was given when it released, to when the show was going to save Nickelodeon. That aged well. You fool! When Nickelodeon started giving the show more attention after it successfully toppled SpongeBob in ratings, a lot of people were hopeful that they had learned from their previous mistakes and that this show would usher in a new era. Obviously, we know this did not happen, because if you ever expect a corporation to change for the better, then you're probably either still an infant or have the brain capacity of a plastic fork. But given all of that, what does Loudhouse's current treatment as Nickelodeon's cash cow mean for the network? Well, this still means that their schedule is going to be the absolute worst, and it also means that this newfound success given to the show by the level of overhype it received 4 years ago is, well, let's just put it lightly. It has ironically created the very thing the people hyping the show up feared in the first place. Not just a direct competitor to SpongeBob, but an interchangeable replica. If the show was still good, Ned wouldn't mind this as much, but as evidence, the level of quality control at Nickelodeon is quite embarrassing. And given the fact that the show is still popular, and also still has people overhyping it online, I don't see this ending anytime soon. I mean, to be honest, it was always fated to be this way. I mean, the logo and the main character are fucking orange. I'd say that's enough for the show to become the poster child for the network. I mean, I knew something was up the second they made a tap and wait mobile game with microtransactions. Even if their attempt at stealing money for children didn't go too well for them, there's always the next business decision. I don't see any way this could go terribly wrong. I mean, it is a new direction to take the show after all. We all know how well that goes. The adventure follows the Lau family to Scotland, where they discovered that they're descendants of Scottish royalty. Wait, hold on! Keeping in line with the show's string of quality, it appears that this is a new direction. I just didn't expect it to be a new direction into a brick wall. Now, as much as I've ragged on this on Twitter, there's a possibility that this movie could be somewhat good. Nah, sorry, the Loudhouse can barely keep a consistent narrative together over 11 minutes, much less over an hour. Fuck that nonsense. Of course, the second the show gets a feature-length, higher-budget movie to explore places the show has never gone before, or even touched before, they go with the secret lineage/royalty trope. I am so glad. The show has officially reached a point where it's now consistent in its inconsistency. We frequently refer to this as the Sword Art Online paradox. How about another? By all accounts, they could grab some insanely talented guy to make it work, but my point is that the odds are just a tad too low. And really, it was the movie announcement that kind of pressured me into finally updating my thoughts on the show, my brief thoughts on how Nickelodeon treats it. This show has received a lot of criticism, from stable to not so stable, and this criticism tends to get brushed off by Loudhouse fans who seem to act like the tiniest hint of merit is worthy of all the praise in the world. You can't just say the show is bland and uninteresting. This character had about 5 seconds of emotion aside from being a dipshit, so the show is basically a participation trophy for bad writers. Well, I take it all back. That's perfect for the 21st century. Bring them all here. Back on topic, the Loudhouse is definitely going to have a negative influence on Nickelodeon. Well, it currently is. Nothing has changed with its existence. Nick are still the scum cuts of the animation scene. Passion for good storytelling isn't their forte when they can simply print money with 2 shows. Anything remotely equality gets thrown under the bus without a second thought. Nickelodeon is corporate evil, just like the rest of them. But there's something specific about Nick's treatment of shows that overall just disgusts me. How Avatar The Last Airbender was able to even run for 3 seasons and be successful is a mystery, in all honesty. To end off my brief thoughts on the show's treatment, I'll ask you guys a question. Do you think there's a possibility that Nickelodeon could change someday? I'd love to hear what you have to say if you bother with this. Well, this was something I've been waiting to get off my chest for a while, despite how easy of a target this was. Even then, I hope some of you can understand why the show is so bad. If not, then fine. I don't care. I'm not saying you. I guess I do better when there are more things to rip into to explain why something is bad, but for the Loudhouse there really isn't much to explain. Its flaws are in plain sight. If there's anything you can take away from this video other than left-baiting, it's probably that you should always form your own conclusions. Hollywood is on the decline, and don't take corporations for granted. And if you're a child and have stumbled across this video, pick a decent career path, like engineering or something, and keep up with your studies, because going into acting is a slippery slope to great success at the cost of your innocence. Fuck it. episodes where Lincoln acts like a complete and utter twat that no one likes. Yeah, me neither. I had managed to successfully remove them from my brain until I watched this movie. That's essentially what they do with Lincoln here. And yes, while he realizes what he does is wrong at the end of the film and ultimately ends up redeeming himself, it's still annoying watching the movie take the absolute worst possible route they could have gone with Lincoln's insecurity, by having him be consumed by that jealousy and acting like a smug, entitled brat for the rest of the film, as he goes on his conquest to become the ultimate foreign invader of Scotland. Trust me, they don't like those. I live next to them.
And the one that can suck my dick.
Also, there's a dragon here, because Scotland, just like when they were 10 years late to the Canada jokes, without getting political obviously, the writers for this film don't just script the bottom of the barrel for Scotland jokes, they become the bottom of the barrel for Scotland jokes, and I'm gonna scrape it. Violently. David Tennant, because fuck if I care what his actual name is, tells Lincoln that to become the Duke he has to make life better for the people of Scotland. Ah, yes, that's totally how it works. Scots will absolutely accept an American if he helps out here. They love that, don't you? The wazoo, this doesn't feel natural. Lincoln feels strangely off-model, like he's being rigged, but at the same time not. I'm not an animator, obviously, but for a film that was intended to be a theatrical release, this is nowhere near acceptable. The character movements are fluid in some scenes, but the second they try being more ambitious, they get very choppy. I don't know if it has something to do with interpolation or what, but it's like Adobe Animate was having a fucking stroke while rendering half the scenes. God forbid they tried to put these characters that were not designed with a 3D space in mind in a 3D space. That's a tasty frame rate right there. I'm not saying they didn't try, they clearly did, but the walrus who fell ass over tit trying to prove they could walk on their hind flippers still fell ass over tit in the process. Also, what are you doing in my house? It certainly doesn't help that the key moment where I noticed this was a problem occurred at the same time Lincoln began singing again. This song is somehow worse than the previous two, not because of the beautiful vocals, but because of the actual music. Try and focus on this MIDI-produced sewage. Oh right, I can't do that. It sounds like such an artificial song, like a kid's fault cover of Gangnam Style. This isn't even the worst song in the movie. Oh god, don't force Tennant to sing. I've become a little introspective while I've been writing this, and I think I know how to best enjoy the songs in this movie. You see, if you set yourself on fire...
I burst into dance for a tourist.
Lincoln has another moment of being a selfish noodle and tries to convince his parents to stay in Scotland under the guise of it being for his own benefits. Shut up. I don't really care that Lincoln realizes this is wrong at the end of the film, because it still doesn't excuse what is really poor writing for someone we're supposed to sympathize with. Lincoln feeling inadequate in comparison to others is something a lot of people can relate to, and it's fine to have him do something morally questionable and then realize it's wrong at the end, but to have him be this unlikable is not helping his case. Again, silly movie for kids, but I can think of plenty of silly movies for kids that can at least write a decent character arc that doesn't make you hate the main character, like the reasonable parents they are sometimes. Lynn and Rita reject Lincoln's idea of moving to Scotland.
To our house with one bathroom. We're moving to Scotland.
I hate you. Right away, everyone in the room calls Lincoln out for trying to be the dude. Lincoln reiterates that moving to Scotland would be beneficial for everyone, before then bringing up the bathroom comments. If you want to manipulate someone, you should first make an unreasonable request, wait for the person to reject you, and then follow it up by a more reasonable request. Oh, by the way, I got sidetracked with the rant on the animation from a minute ago, but Lucy manages to summon the ghost of her ancestor, a character that is introduced and then disappears for the rest of the film until they're needed for plot convenience. And I mean, like, very heavy plot convenience. Well, I mean, heavy for this film anyway. It's not Metal Gear Solid 2. She is literally a plot device, and they didn't really consider any methods of disguising that. She's just brought back into a scene at the end of the film, and it's really awkward. Anyway, so Lincoln finally invades Scotland, and we get the schizophrenic recreation of the show's intro, where the animation falls flat at trying to be ambitious again, and the editing was so breakneck you'd think it was handled by a chimp with Parkinson's. Then we get a joke that actually made me chuckle as evil Celtic woman walks for about 30 seconds and then screams that she hates the louds and breaks a vocal cord in the process. There's nothing particularly great about it, I just thought I'd mention that I found it funny, which is not exactly the highest of praise if you've seen my content. Jesus Christ. Celtic Lucy is summoned into existence again to reveal that the original louds did try and come back to Scotland but were driven away by their dragon, as he suddenly deemed the Duke to be unworthy. Also, Dragon Boy has been growing throughout the film, so guess what's going to happen later? It's practically impossible. They had 4 years to write this, by the way. Apparently, the old caretaker of the castle and the relative of evil Celtic woman kept a journal and was apparently able to find and be in possession of a gem that could control the Duke's dragon. How? Why? Don't know. Why does this gem exist in the first place, since it makes the dragon perpetually pissed off? Don't know. What did old Aggie have against the Louds? Don't know. At least their great-grandchild has a fucking motive. Did Aggie discover the gem herself? Were the old Louds aware of its existence, because they clearly don't seem to consider it a possibility? I don't know. I don't expect much from kids' films, honestly. I'm not upset at any of this. There's just very minimal effort being put into this, and I feel sorry for watching it with my sister. I don't really mind if something for kids is good or bad, I just want them to care, mainly. Plot consistency was not something I was expecting, to be honest, but the film is just agonizingly boring, which is a very subjective take, but it doesn't do anything of note. It's like asking for a semi-decent meal and being served fucking milk toast that's been set on fire. The fire being this next song. No, not the song, that's not the song is shit! It's the worst one so far. Like the others I have been able to tolerate without cheese grating my ears off, but this song, my god. Complete and utter lemming shite. Basically, her plan is to make Lincoln's sisters famous in Scotland like they were back home, which will make Lincoln jealous, so he'll ride around town on Dragon Boy, only for the women of Celts to control it and get him in trouble, which will then force him to leave. Like that's ever gonna work. Lincoln is already famous just from being the Duke. There's absolutely no way. Are you baiting me? Firstly, can I just talk about how little of an impact Lincoln's sisters actually have on this horror film? Because it's practically next to none. This is a movie that's exclusively about Lincoln. But along the way, it's like they forgot that the sisters were also main characters. Their main narrative purpose in the film is to show up and be a twat for 5 seconds, which has the potential to be funny, but there's only so many times the writers can use underage girls to tickle their diaper fetish before you want to take an entire bottle of cyanide pills. There's a part of me that thinks they know exactly what they're doing when it comes to the fetish scenes in this film, by the way, because there's no other explanation for it at this point. Who let Dan Schneider on the writing team? Like at the start of the movie, they have Lenny get into a relationship with this random guy, which first of all is not nationally accurate, and second of all, it goes nowhere. He's just her boyfriend now and appears at times. It's like they had ideas for what to do with the sisters, but they were kept on some kind of leash in the unlikely event that one of them took a fucking risk. There must have been a moment of crisis in Brian Robin's office at the time. Oh shit, someone always did something different, Brian exclaimed before aiming his rifle at the man's family. What the hell am I talking about? Oh yeah, I get that writing like 10 other characters besides the protag is a difficult job, no doubt, but don't pretend like the sisters aren't important to the heart and soul of the show. They should be involved more of the plot so that I don't get the urge to club a baby seal when Lynn gets a second of screen time to herself, because just having them in the film doing nothing for the majority of their scenes just means they could have been cut out to give the main plot more time to breathe, because they waste so much space in this rather miserable plot that they could resettle a quarter of the refugees from Afghanistan there. Okay, rant over. Second of all, Lincoln has literally everything he could ever want right now, including fame, so I don't see why he's so ready to make his sisters feel completely inadequate. You petty cunt. Your parents were lying, you were absolutely adopted. So because characters are hard to write, Lincoln hypocritically tries to steal the spotlight from his sisters who have been performing for like a few minutes tops. The animators decided to take a break from trying, and every prediction you could have had for the plot happens as Celtic woman controls the dragon who destroys several parts of town. Am I rushing through this? No, there's like 20 minutes of the film left. I'm not kidding. Pacing be damned. Luckily, the damage is relatively minimal, so despite it looking really fucking stupid on Lincoln's part, it can be easily fixed with no loss to the town. You lost a chip shot. Lincoln starts sulking over how much of a twat he is, and his sisters come to tell him that he isn't a twat and say they'll fix the town together. But Lincoln gives up the crown anyway to bask in his twattiness. The lads are forced out of Scotland, and Celtic woman finally takes the crown for herself, and the crowd cheers for her getting rid of the foreigners. This is actually accurate, but David Tennant is quick to call her out since it was never agreed that she'd have the crown, and some people begin to question her. It was at this point that the writers realized they only have about 10 minutes of movie left, so try to put yourself in this woman's shoes and guess what she does next. I'll give you some time. Time's up. Obviously the intelligent decision is to start destroying the town that you wanted control of. I see no flaws in this logic. I'm 6 pages into the script.